This video was made possible with the support of my patrons. They say it takes a village to raise a child, but what happens when your village is toxic? When you have a mom who says, "You never threw tantrums like that" about your toddler, or a dad who says, "I would babysit but I just got a new puppy" as soon as your newborn arrives, or the pièce de résistance, an in-law who says, "Well, I didn't get any help raising you," which includes the not so subtle subtext of, "and therefore I won't be helping you with your kids." These are just some anecdotes I saw on the absent grandparent subreddit recently and that inspired this video. Specifically, one thread where someone who doesn't have kids pointed out how, well, there are some entitled parents out there who feel entitled to a village without being villagers. How dare adult children expect their parents to care about their grandchildren and expect some childcare support, especially in the US where there is no free universal daycare. The horror. But I do find this argument to be quite telling and important to talk about because to me it illustrates how little some people understand the concept of the village, and more specifically, the childcare village. Hence the "it takes a village to raise a child." Many see it as this sort of transactional relationship, this idea that you get what you put in. If you're not a villager, why should I give a shit if you had a kid even though you might be my mom or dad or sister or brother or friend? You don't care about me, so I don't care about you. And maybe then you just shouldn't be in a childcare village, and that's fine too. No pressure to care about kids, whether they're related to you or not, but don't go about pretending that you don't want to help because so-and-so wasn't a villager or isn't being a villager. Just be honest. And let me emphasize here, I do agree that you do get what you put into a relationship. Of course, you shouldn't be in a one-sided relationship and shouldn't be exploited by a friend or family member and be bridled with unrealistic expectations because of a label. But specifically talking about absent grandparents, it was their job to take care of their kids. And many just peace out when it comes time to step up as a grandparent, and in my opinion, that's not right. A parent's job is to be there for your children and grandchildren, and many have failed in that regard, and that sort of relationship is primarily fostered by the parent. But many times it's the kid who hangs on for that parental love that unfortunately sometimes never comes, and that is not an unfair expectation for the adult children to have of their parents. Of course, there are instances where parents thrust their kids onto family members because they don't want to step up as parents and who use the excuse of family or friendship as a tool of convenience. "Oh, you're my brother or you're my sister, so you have to take care of my kid." And that is something that is wrong and that does happen. But most of what I've seen, at least in the absent grandparent subreddit, are adult children with kids venting about how even though they care so much about their own parents who also claim to be so excited about their first grandchildren, but then suddenly disappear once they're born, or who make up 1,001 excuses to not visit or help out with their own adult child going through postpartum, or who have siblings with kids but because of X, Y, or Z aren't close enough with them, and that potential cousin relationship and village between kids becomes non-existent. The absent grandparent phenomena and this idea of a transactional village has made hundreds of adults reevaluate their own childhoods, their own relationships to their parents and family and friends who they have been there for and who thought they cared about them, but who now struggle with this idea that they're on their own despite, again, their efforts to be villagers. They've tried to meet their parents on their own terms. I've read stories about people who have driven hours to be with their mom or dad or siblings because they refuse to come to them even though they have a newborn. Or even worse, a family that lives quite close, but there's always something that stops them from hanging out with their kids and grandkids. I personally just find it ironic how the village is dwindling in an age where we're recognizing the struggles of parenting and the rights of children more and more. Now that we're acknowledging domestic labor struggles women go through, female family members and other women aren't necessarily always stepping up for the women who do choose to have kids. You'd think that with this acknowledgement, women would be willing to help each other more and be a part of a village that surrounds a child, that centers a child, but many instead are like, "You chose this," and the glorified trad wife has taken center stage who does everything on their own because that's how you should do it. And I see this from women of all generations. And though I understand it, because not all women like kids just because they're women, I find it odd when I see female friends and family members who are close to the mother not stepping up. And just people in general, regardless of their gender. Of course, not all people are like this, but a lot are. And because there is no village, it makes women who might want to have kids not have kids because they don't see their friends and family stepping up for the women in their lives and only hear moms complaining about the lack of help. Of course, there are many reasons why women are choosing again to not have kids nor want to help due to gendered expectations which are unfair and that we'll get into later. Men step up. But I do think it's very telling that women are having kids less because they've realized that even if they do have a kid, there's no village, no community of women or men or anyone who will be able to fully support them in those first few years. And that really sucks. And again, shouldn't just fall on women. And it's also not the fault of the whiny entitled parents nor those choosing to be childless, but the fault of the capitalistic patriarchal system in which we live that does not support families or babies. A system that demands infinite growth from its populace, that makes us work too much, pays us too little, and which takes us away from our loved ones. And now people are creating arguments against the village or reducing it down to social transactions. The dwindling village coincides with a decline in the birth rate, and this great privilege in a lot of the world of people being able to choose to be parents or not, and how more and more people are opting out of parenthood, which is fine and good, and many adults are contributing to children in other ways aside from just becoming a parent. That is possible. But because of this societal and cultural shift in the birth rate and people choosing not to become parents, it's been harder to get family and friends on board with helping. Even people you'd expect to help because they were your parent, friend, or sibling. And I know that, of course, as a parent, I am biased. My kid is my world, but not anyone else's. No one is obligated to care for them or care about them. But I also find that mentality to be so mean to both the kid and the parent. Even again in an era where we say we love kids, kids have rights, and we say this on a global scale, on a micro scale at home in the day-to-day, kids continue to be seen as obligations rather than little humans. And parents continue to be put upon for having an unfair expectation for help from people they thought cared about them. So if the village isn't transactional, what is it? And what happens when your village is toxic? Well, that's what I'm going to explore in the rest of this video. So without further ado, let's go. And just for the record here, these are just my own thoughts and opinions. Please let your thoughts be known down in the comments below. Of course, this is from my experience. Everyone else will have their own thoughts. So part 1, what is the village? So in the intro, we talked about the argument, some parents want a village without being villagers. And there are some parents who unfairly expect help without having cared about their family or friends in the past, or only care about them superficially, but expect this big village to be there for them no matter what. Parents who exploit familial ties and friendships to guilt others into caring for their kids for them because they never wanted to be parents or realized that parenting just wasn't for them. And that does happen a lot. Boomer grandparents, for instance, say they never got help from anyone without realizing their parents had a huge role in raising their kids. And though again this does happen, I am really skeptical about this argument on the whole, because why would new parents expect their family or friends to be present in their kids' lives if they weren't already villagers to begin with? Sure, some people just use the excuse of you're my mom or you're my dad or sibling, so therefore you should step up and help, and throw their kid at them and then leave for the night. But I don't think these expectations today for a village would exist without first having an established bond and repertoire with their family and friends. I think it makes more sense that parents might be shocked that their friendships fade or that their family isn't as interested in their kids as they thought, because of course as a new parent your baby is everything to you but not for everyone else, and that is something that I've had to realize as a parent, and that's fine, and we can have those conversations. The truth is that a lot of the time when a baby comes, you do expect as a new parent for everyone to be like flocking in and doting on them, but that's just not the case because people have their own routines and life goes on. We put a lot of unfair pressure on these labels of grandma and grandpa, aunt and uncle, when people are just people and you can't control them or make them meet your expectations, and everyone again has their own life. But I will say, having a baby reveals who actually cares about you and how close you actually are to people in your orbit. It wasn't until after I had my kid that I realized who actually was in my village, who did continually be in my circle despite me not being able to be a full villager as a new parent. People who were there for me when I wasn't sleeping at night, when I was coming into this role of being a mom, they showed themselves to me. And the sad thing is, it wasn't a lot of people. And I'd say it's similar for a lot of other people today. The safety net was a lot smaller than I imagined, but those who stayed I know really care and saw me as an important part of their village in return, even when I couldn't be a full part of their village. At a time when I was becoming a parent, they were there for me when I didn't necessarily have the time for them. And in the end, that is what the village is. It's not, you need to pull your weight to stay here. It's, I see your struggle and I'm going to be there because I know you'll be there for me when I need you. Take your time, I see you, and I'm here. The village can so easily turn into an oppression Olympics, if you will, if we see it solely as transactional, solely as, well, you are what you bring to the table, and if you bring nothing, then get out. You shouldn't expect people to help you just because you had a kid. That's your problem. And that kind of thinking is just so cruel to me. That's not how a social safety net works. A social safety net and a communal village works in a way that is selfless. You might not be personally benefiting from someone having a kid, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't care. In Brazil, for example, we have universal health care. And though I may not directly benefit right now from that, eventually I know I will need to call an ambulance or go to the doctors. And because we are all paying into that fund, I know I'll have that insurance in the future. And when I'm healthy, other people can get that benefit as well. But so many people hate this idea of free healthcare because they're not directly benefiting right now, or because other people are benefiting that shouldn't be, like wealthy people who could hypothetically afford health insurance, or undeserving poor people who should just pull themselves up by their bootstraps and get into medical debt the old-fashioned way, or take care of their kids on their own like I did, even though you really didn't. This way of thinking that you're only going to participate in the social safety net or the village if everyone else is pulling their equal weight is nonsense to me. We all contribute in our own ways when we can and when we're able, and sometimes we can't contribute. The net lifts us all up regardless of if we have kids, if we're able-bodied, if we're mentally well or ill, and that's why it's so important, because it helps those who may not be able to be villagers, because in the end, not everyone will be a villager 100% of the time throughout their entire life. Some people will have to take a step back from the village because they have kids, or because they get sick, or face a disabling event, or have a chronic illness, or become unemployed, and that's why they have the village. So those who can step up do, regardless if they directly benefit at that moment or at all. If someone needs to take a step back because they have a kid and can't be present in your village, there should be villagers who step up to help them, either family or friends who maybe cook a postpartum meal or wash dishes on the weekend, anything to help out to make someone's life easier, especially a friend or family member. Even just being present and not on your phone when you visit your friend and their baby is something. And I just hope more people can view the village as a community rather than as individual villagers who need to prove themselves or be constantly contributing, and if they don't, we need to cut them loose because they're weighing us down. That's an extremely individualistic mindset, and it's harmful to more than just kids and parents, but to the elderly, to the disabled, to those in poverty, and those in marginalized communities. On the other hand, I do get that some people just don't like kids nor want to be around them, regardless if they happen to be grandparents or aunts or uncles or cousins, and that's fine. Don't force yourself into a situation where you're going to be angry or annoyed at kids, but you better be okay with subsidizing programs for free healthcare, free school lunches, and daycares, period. This argument of parents expect a village without being villagers came about on a thread highlighting gender expectations for women and child caring, how a father-in-law didn't realize his grandmother helped raise him, because he probably was just oblivious to her domestic labor because it was her job as his grandma, highlighting how a big part of why women are choosing not to have children is because they don't want to be forsaken by the men in their lives and their family, and are sick and tired of doing domestic work that is invisible to, again, their significant others and family members. In many instances, women are the default child rearers and homemakers, and the women of today have had enough. They're not going to be coerced into starting a family just because it's their job or societal norm or expectation, and I think that's a good thing, especially considering how many older women have come forward saying they didn't really want to be mothers, or even older women who are absent grandmothers because they never really wanted to have kids of their own or even liked being around kids, period. It's good that they're not involved with kids if they don't like them. It's not such a big loss. Having a village filled with women who dislike children is just a recipe for a disaster, let alone men who don't like children. I also think that it's normal for women to resent child rearing and this role that they're just defaulted into. It's an unfair burden to expect a sister or a female friend or in-law to care about your kid or want to take part in that child rearing just because they're a woman. men do not face that same responsibility. And as an oldest daughter in a matriarchal family and someone raised in part by my grandmother, I get that resentment. It's a giant burden to bear knowing how much a mom relies on you as the oldest daughter to look after the house and siblings and pets and even the elderly when she's not there, even though you're still a kid yourself. On the other hand, I don't think it's an unfair expectation to expect your friends or family, no matter their gender, to at least take some interest in your child that is also going to be part of their world if they choose to keep you in their village. Of course, it's unfair to expect help just because someone is a woman, but if they are your mom or your sister or your friend, why are we talking about hanging out with you and your baby like it's some sort of torturous obligation? If they really care about you as a person, they should be excited for you. And maybe part of why they're not excited is because they like you but are uncomfortable around babies and little kids, which is fair. They could also be angry that having this baby means that you won't be part of their village as much, that you won't be able to be their villager because now you're creating a separate village. And that talk can be had via open communication with your friends and loved ones. Like I said earlier, a baby brings out who will stay with you during this time where you might be absent from their circle and who won't. And I think both staying when a friend has a baby and deciding maybe they're just on a different path are both valid choices, as long as again everyone is on the same page and openly communicates, and that no one is thrown under the bus or blamed for the dissolution of a relationship simply because a baby entered the picture. Sometimes people just want different things in life, and life happens and it's no one's fault. It's not because someone had unfair expectations or wasn't contributing enough, but rather some people, specifically women, are tired of having this gendered expectation to love and care for and know all about children, when parenting and child rearing and caring is a skill and one that men should also be learning about and taking up some of the domestic labor so it doesn't just fall on women because they're women. So what can you do if you realize that your village is toxic? Well, many have either gone low or no contact with family that has either hurt the parent, like absent grandparents who don't show up or who show no interest in their life post kids, like distant friends. And usually this low contact or no contact comes after some sort of discussion or fight, and it doesn't happen easily. There's also the hard reality that new parents need help, but the help they do have is just subpar, but they can't risk alienating anyone in their circle because they need help in order to study, go to work, and take breaks when needed because parenting is really tiring. From what I've seen, the obligatory village that is formed just due to people's labels like mom, dad, sister, brother sometimes consists of just downright bad people or bad parents that could be a potential help as fellow parents, but they just suck at parenting. I have in-laws who have kids, but I can't trust them to watch my kid. They drink while watching children, they let them watch YouTube Kids, and they just have a bunch of other crap that I won't get into, and I don't want my kid to be around them unsupervised because they're still really young. It sucks that having subpar parents in your village shrinks the village, but it is what it is. There's potential there to have a village because of familial obligation and just like physical closeness, but not necessarily emotional closeness. But it's not worth leaving a child in the care of someone just because they're family if they're not good parents or trustworthy adults in turn. When your village is toxic but you don't want to go low or no contact with people, the best thing to do is to have those hard talks and see where they lead. But sometimes it's just not worth it and you just stick to low contact and your village shrinks, but it's again worth it to know that your kid is at least being watched by you and not subpar parents. I have seen other great family dynamics where grandparents on both sides help to take care of the grandchild and show genuine interest in their adult kids and grandkids' well-being and their lives, as well as have seen in-laws and siblings help, even though they might not have kids or want kids of their own. It does happen. Happy families exist. Or at least families that communicate and don't just have these expectations of each other that go unmet. It does exist, but sadly family members caring about one another outside of superficial labels or even outside of what you can do for me and vice versa is few and far between. So in this video I've discussed how the village gets misconstrued under late stage capitalism and hyperindividuality. Rather than people caring for one another for the sake of it because they can recognize someone else's humanity, it turns into a game of well, what are you gonna do for me? If you're not pulling your weight as a parent, why should I help you with your kid that you decided to have? How will your kid benefit me? How will helping them benefit me? And because kids cannot contribute under a capitalistic society, at least in a world that has child labor laws, though even those are loosely followed, they get pushed to the side, even in a time where we're recognizing on a global scale how important kids and their rights are and how parents need to be supported with universal daycare, etc. I think it's great that today families are being started because of a desire to raise children rather than as obligations or societal expectations, especially for women and reproductive rights and the right to choose. On the other hand, I find it very concerning that a lot of people think it's okay to disregard new parents for complaining about the lack of the village because they're not being villagers when they just became parents and are now in a very vulnerable state of their lives and are in this transition of becoming parents. It takes a village to raise a child. That phrase is about children. It's about community. It's about being there for the parents because they can't do it on their own. It's not about what the child or the parents can in turn do for you. It's about having mutual trust and respect that even though the parents can't pull their weight right now and might need help, they will be at some other point be ready to help you. And even if they can't pull their weight, their child is still worth giving to because they're a child who deserves to be here just as much as an adult. I hope that this argument that I've made here makes sense, and I'm really trying not to be mean to people who dislike children or get annoyed by them or don't want them in their life. I get it, kids can be a pain, and if you don't want them, you can live that life. And with that said, I think it's fair for me to say to stop complaining about parents expecting to have a village when in reality, it's only fair for the parents to think that those who cared about them pre-baby would still be there for them post-baby, even if they can't be villagers, or maybe they weren't the perfect villagers before. And maybe if they weren't, you guys could have a discussion about that instead of complaining that they're complaining that they don't have a village. Again, barring the examples where a friend or family member foists their child upon you without being there for you. But most parents, I think, come about it in good faith and genuinely are very surprised at how small the village has become despite having people around who do care and like them as people, like their own parents, siblings, friends, cousins, and then just see them disappear after the baby's born. I just think we should all try to make more time for kids in our lives, if you want that, of course, and if you like spending time with kids, be there, and if you don't, at least be on the side of universal daycare and healthcare and education. So that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this came across clearly, and know that it was written and expressed in good faith. Let me know what you think down below. If you agree, disagree, give it a like, share it with someone, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.